Welcome to Sunday Night Prime, and we're delighted to have you joining us this evening, and I hope that you keeping up praying for the church, watching out for the church from the constant attack of the media, and speak up. They've been picking on the Catholic Church for months and months now, and it's disgusting, quite honestly, and insulting to a great many of religious people, not just Catholics, not just Christians. Our visitor this evening, we're very honored to have with us a representative of the Holy See, of the popes, so to speak, and a very fine Archbishop who is going to be talking to us about the United Nations. So welcome Archbishop Francis Chulikatt, who is the representative of the Holy See to the United Nations. And Archbishop, tell us a little bit about your own background.
Well, first of all, I wish to thank you for hosting me for this beautiful program. And when you invited me, I immediately accepted it because
yes.
I really liked it. And the good work the EWTN is doing is something very nice. And I think we really need a program such as this so that we can bring to the attention of the general public information regarding several issues, issues of immediate concern as well as the concerns that would in general be of interest to everyone who will be watching this program. So I wish to thank you once
yes.
again for this invitation. Regarding my call to priesthood, I could say that it all started with an invitation from a Salesian priest a long time ago.
A Salesian?
A Salesian priest who used to come to our Catholic school and talk about the vocation to priesthood and religious life. And that's how I started thinking about the priestly life. And I thought of joining the seminary. And when I applied myself to be part of the Salesian community, unfortunately, when I presented myself for the entrance exam of the Salesian community, there I was told I was a little late in getting the application across. So they suggested me the diocese seminary has not yet had the entrance exam, so you could apply there. And that's how I presented my application to the diocesan seminary, where I was accepted by the then Archbishop of our archdiocese called Archdiocese of Virapoli. That's in
southern India,
southwest part of India, in the state called Kerala. And that's how everything started. Then I did my studies there, and after my the university studies, then I was sent to Rome for philosophy and theology, which I did at Pontifical Urban University. And for the ordination, I returned to India for my ordination. And after the ordination, I served as secretary of the Archbishop of our diocese for about 3 years. And thereafter, I was sent back to Rome to do the biblical studies. So that was until 78 to 81. Then once I finished the biblical studies, then I was asked to join the Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy.
Explain to that what that is to the folks.
The Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy is the institution where the future diplomats of the Holy See are being educated and formed. Especially we concentrate very much on the international law and ecclesiastical diplomacy, as well as the working of the nunciatures around the world and the works of the Roman Curia and the various dicasteries that are involved there. And we also deal with many canonical issues and the diplomatic styles and so on and so forth. So everything that has to do with the foreign service we get that training there at the Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy. Once you finish that, then you are ready to be assigned to one of the nunciatures around the world. Nunciatures are the equivalent of the embassies. Then from that on, you can be a staff of one of the nunciatures. On an exceptional basis, some of us will be immediately assigned to one of the Roman Curia or at the Secretariat of State, mainly to the Secretariat of State, whereas especially the second section that deals with the foreign affairs. So that's how we get started. Then once you are assigned in the nunciatures, then every 2, 3, or 4 years we'll be transferred from one nunciature to the other. That means from one country to the other. It could be from one continent to the other. So in my case, for example, my first assignment was in Central America. It was in Honduras. And my second assignment was in South Africa. So you see, from Latin America to Africa. And thereafter I was sent to the Philippines. So I was shifted to Asia. And from Asia, I was assigned here in New York at the United Nations in the year 2000. And thereafter, I was sent to the Vatican. So it goes according to the amount of years that you are serving at the service of the Holy See. So every 3, 4 years, you get transferred. And that's how you get this service and experience in the diplomatic life.
Many of our audience would not be aware that the Catholic Church maintains diplomatic relationships with most of the countries in the world. Our Protestant churches don't do that. The World Council of Churches has a relationship, but in each large country and even many small countries, the Vatican or the Holy See keeps a relationship, and if they don't, then they also have a representative there, even though they don't have an official ambassador. I don't know, Archbishop, does the United States have a relationship, an official relationship with the Catholic Church?
The United States established its diplomatic relations with the Holy See. So we have formal diplomatic relations with the United States. And by the way, the Holy See has diplomatic relations with 177 countries.
170.
That is on a state-to-state basis. We have that diplomatic relations.
And some are Muslim countries.
Yes,
and some
of course.
Of them are...
Of course, we have. It's not all Catholic countries, of course. Then we have also diplomatic representation with the international organizations, and one of them is the United Nations, or European Union. We have our observers in African Union, Arab League, so on and so forth. So we have. On a diplomatic level, we are present all over the world. Maybe Holy See is one of the few entities that have diplomatic relations on such a wide sphere of in the world, and so many countries at the same time recognize the status of the Holy See.
Some years ago, there was a loud complaining on some people in the United States that the church had this relationship through the diplomacy and embassies. And they said that it does a great deal of good, that it's advantageous to many countries in the world to have a relationship with an international organization, the largest international organization in the world.
That's right.
And
yes, our presence is in almost all the countries. They welcome the presence of the Holy See because one of the characteristics of the Holy See is that we are neutral and objective in assessing the facts and in addressing the issues. We always aim for the common good of the person that we are serving, or the nation that we are serving, or the society, or the humanity at large. So they can trust the Holy See. One is, because of His presence, it can only do good. We don't get into conflicts. No. We are always part of the solution, not part of the problem. So the Holy See's prestige and the Holy See's presence is highly appreciated. And that you can see also at the United Nations, that we are respected there, in spite of the disagreements that we'll have to address oftentimes. But in spite of those things, the Holy See is highly regarded at the international level. That's why we are invited to be part of many of the global events. And you can see this oftentimes, and most of the times we are there.
Yes.
And maybe we are there as observers, but that may be on a technical title that we inscribed as observers at an international conference or international event. But that does not mean that we are not playing an active role in the international life. And we are very much active, as we are at the United Nations. In any other international forum, we are very much active, and we try to get our message across always.
And for example, in a particular country, maybe the revolution or something, and people are being hurt, abused, killed, the interaction of the Holy See may moderate things considerably. You know, a friend of mine was telling me he was walking down the street, and it was the embassy to the Holy See of Estonia.
Yes.
Tiny little country that is largely a Lutheran country. Hardly, not many
Yes.
Catholics in Estonia, but that relationship is advantageous to them. And
yes, you are exactly right, because we don't look at a person on the basis of his or her belongingness to a country or to a religion or an ethnicity. We see a human being that has been willed and designed and created by God after His image. It is the human dignity that we always defend. And it's because of the worth and dignity of a human person, we are there to serve them. The church is at the service of the human person. And this, everybody knows that. And because of that, we are welcome in any country. Even in Muslim countries or in a non-Christian country, our presence is welcomed. Because of that, I can give you so many examples that could prove that Holy See's presence is highly valued because of this dedicated service that they want to give to every human being, independent of their belongingness to a religion or ethnicity, whatever we might want to classify that person. But we are there at the service of each and every human being.
I think we Catholics don't understand this, and we should really feel very happy and honored that our church is able to function in an international way, and not proselytizing or anything like that, but simply keeping things going between the nations of the world. And of course, in your own particular position, you're in the United Nations. And I'm sure that they, although you are not a delegate of the United Nations, we are the official observer. And I'm sure that you are received very respectfully and helpfully by the members.
It is because of that they are respecting us, because we don't take sides. These issues. We really stand for the fundamental values and the moral principles and ethical values that we want to hold on to. So we don't take sides, we don't politicize anything. We are away from this politicization of matters, but we see things as they are. So in its core value that we would like to bring it to the attention of the international community, this is what it's all about. So let us try to stand for those basic principles and values that we can never compromise on. So on this basis, and because of the consistency of our position on all these issues, we are respected.
Isn't that beautiful? We have to have a little break. Listen, folks, this is a part of Catholicism that you don't know much about. And listen in. I'll be back in a minute. Well, Archbishop, I'm so pleased you're able to tell our audience, and Catholics and non-Catholics, about this very benign involvement of the Church. And Church should do that. We're an international religious organization. We should be helpful to everybody. We're not there simply for Catholics or for Christians, but to keep the human society functioning nicely. Now, you yourself, what do you have to do when you're going on? You don't have to go in and vote with various things because you're not a delegate. What do you do all week?
Well, Holy See Mission at the United Nations has the observer status. You know that in 2004, we got a resolution of the United Nations, which was adopted by consensus, recognizing the observer status of the Holy See Mission to the United Nations. What does that mean? It gives us a forum at the United Nations to talk about the Church's point of view on all the issues. On all the issues that are there. So you can talk about the disarmament affairs, you can talk about the nuclear issues, you can talk about the economic and financial issues, you can talk about the cultural issues, religious issues, you can talk about the human rights issues, you can talk about the legal issues. So there are a variety of issues, but all concern the human person. And since it concerns the human person, the Church has a role to play there, because we are in the process of making history. Whether you want it or not, all of us are part of the history in the making. And whenever the history is in the making, the Church has something to say about it. And Church has to say something about it, because that is how we are accompanying the human person on that long journey towards our final destination. So the Church is always there, present there. And that presence, we have to make it known, not only at the Church level, but also outside the churches. And the International Forum is a privileged forum where you can really speak freely. That's all the freedom of expression is about. We can speak freely on any issue, and we have that freedom to talk about it. And of course, the message is there for everybody to listen to, and it is up to them to accept it or to reject it.
Now, I was told by one of the former people very high in the United Nations, I don't want to mention his name, he's deceased now, very good Catholic man from Latin America. He told me that from some of the Arab countries, hardly anybody is other than a Muslim. The countries are 99% Muslim. But they respected the Holy See.
Yes.
You don't have a relationship directly, but they showed very real appreciation to the Holy See.
It's very interesting that you are mentioning that, Father Benedict, because oftentimes when you are talking about the life issues,
yes,
when you are talking about the moral and ethical issues, Muslim countries, they come forward to support the Holy See. Unfortunately, our traditionally Catholic countries, they are the ones to oppose the Holy See at the United Nations. which not many people know that.
On abortion, for instance.
For example, on the abortion issues, when we take a very strong pro-life stand, we have been really opposed by many of the Western countries, which is a sad thing. Because for me, if you don't protect a life, then what does it matter, the rest of it? This is the most fundamental right. If you don't have the right to life, all other rights just fall apart.
Falls apart.
So the very basic fundamental right, which is the right to life, and I prefer to call it the right of the unborn. How could we ever talk about all other rights that derive from it? So oftentimes we are in a very confused situation when we are talking about the right of the unborn at the United Nations. Unfortunately, there are also many Latin American countries that object to the Holy See's position on the right of the unborn. And my heart is really saddened when I see this kind of opposition that comes from the traditionally Catholic countries, which should not be the case. Because I know that in many of those countries, the majority of the population, they stand for the right of the unborn. But in spite of that, certain government policies, because of these government policies, they project the image that the entire nation whom they represent is anti-life, which is not the case. So there are the twisting and distortion of facts that oftentimes that happen that should not be happening at the United Nations. But unfortunately, it does happen. And once again, the Holy See's presence sometimes could be the lone voice there, talking about the rights of the unborn, talking about the rights of those who are not protected, to become the voice of the voiceless, and to fight for the rights of those who are defenseless. And these are the kind of mission that we are doing at the United Nations. And oftentimes, as I said, we become like vox clamans in deserto. But in spite of that, we have an obligation to come up with the right way of approaching it, addressing that issue, and also to put the message very clearly to the international community. Don't forget the fundamental and basic values on which the society is founded. Because if you don't have that, the rest will collapse.
Yes. And that is the really tragic situation of our time, that the killing of an unborn, defenseless child puts a huge question mark on the whole belief in human dignity and human life. It's a terrible thing. And Your Excellency, if the Holy See only has that purpose of being in the United Nations as that voice, that's all that it needs to do. It does many other things.
Yes. No, we have. I mean, this is some of the issues that we deal with because not many speak about it at the United Nations. So I always tell the members of our staff that it does not mean that we are dealing only with this issue, but this is the fundamental issue that we are. But we have also other issues because we are talking about the integral development of the human person. But if you don't start with this, we are not going to do much of the talking about the further development of that human person. So first and foremost, the human person has to exist. So it starts with the beginning of the life, which we say from the conception to natural death. So this is the lifespan of the human person. So we have to start with, if the very beginning, if you don't get it right, then how can you get it right for the rest of the life? So that's why we are focusing first and foremost on this. But we are dealing with several other issues, and I would say almost all other issues at the United Nations the development issues. For example, when you talk about the bioethic issues, the cloning, for example, is something that the Holy See has been very active in that. When you talk about the nuclear issues, for example,
yes.
where a catastrophe that could happen to look what is happening, for example, in Japan, for example, the nuclear reactor that has got out of control now. So this a nuclear Armageddon, if you want to call it that way, if you can avoid, that should be one of the things that the international community should be worried about. For nuclear issues, Holy See has been very outspoken. The atomic weapons, for example, that should not, it should be totally eliminated.
They shouldn't exist.
They shouldn't exist at all, you know. So, and development issues, the right to development of the developing countries, for example, they should not be left behind from the process of development. So the rich countries have an obligation to help the poor countries. During this week, we have been dealing with the least developed countries.
The what?
Least developed countries. We call them LDCs at the United Nations. So we are talking about the development of these underdeveloped countries for their progress and for the projects that we can, at the international level, we can help them out so that they can build a better future for themselves, for their the people, as well as the nation at large of many of these countries around the world. That's on the development level, that they don't have all the access to for example, the new technology that has to be put at the service not only of the developed countries but also the non-developed countries. So we are dealing with many issues at the United Nations, always for the common good of the society and the world at large.
Of course, another area that I hear you to speak about is international health. You know, when you get spreading into the world kinds of contagions and things like that, I imagine the United Nations speaks about that, you know. For instance, the nuclear use, we're frightened right now, all of us, in Japan about the machines that with an earthquake. All these people, their lives suddenly hanging in the balance.
That's why the health issues has been very much in the focus of our dealings at the United Nations. The Holy See has been always promoting the basic health care for everybody in the world, especially for the developing countries. And you can see that you could go further to anywhere in the world. There is a Catholic institution that takes care of the basic health care of the people, as I said in the beginning, independent of the fact that whether they are Christian or non-Christian. But we are there to give that the basic health care and the primary education. And you can see all over the world, even in the remotest villages. I was in Iraq, and I can give the first-hand information about that. Even in the remotest villages, you can see that there is a church's institution serving the people there, independent of the fact that whether they are Christian or non-Christian. This is this must be one of the priorities of the United Nations. I have been talking in my interaction with ambassadors and various delegates. I always bring this issue to the forefront to tell them, let us focus on the basic healthcare needs and the primary education, which is also part of the Millennium Development Goals, which they call now, which was adopted in the year 2000, and we just reviewed also.
Yes, good things have been done in half a century. For instance, the reduction of malaria.
Yes.
It was all over the place, and now it's quite limited, and other serious health problems seem to be clearing up, and I'm sure it's an international effort that has done that. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with Archbishop Chulikatt. We're on this evening with Archbishop Francis Chulikatt, who is the representative, observer of the Vatican of the Holy See to the United Nations, right here in New York. And I kind of think about the UN because my dad, who was a civil engineer, built the United Nations building. His company, the Turner Construction Company, built it, and he was the project manager of the building of that building. So I feel kind of warm about the place. It's not a particularly attractive building, but it's there. And the UN has been a presence here in the United Nations, in New York, since the late 40s. And we just sort of think about the whole thing. That's the part of what we think. Now, Archbishop, here is the Catholic Church at the present time facing the whole world. When you and I, or particularly when I was young, we had arch enemies against the Church. Stalin wanted to destroy the Church. Hitler, a diabolical figure. They hated the Church, hated the Pope. I remember as a boy, there was a fear that the Pope was going to be kidnapped and brought up into Germany by Hitler, and the words of Cardinal Spellman had published after the war that the Pope Pius had written to Spellman, or given to Spellman, a letter that if he is kidnapped into Germany, that the Church should ignore anything that the Pope says, because he would be under control. Now, what a terrible time that was. I remember as a youngster, the priest on Sunday morning preaching that we needed a crusade to deliver the world from Hitler, a crusade. And now things have gone on much better, and I would have to say that the United Nations couldn't do all the things they hoped it was going to do, but it did provide an opportunity for the nations to discuss and talk to each other and be there. And so I think you would say that the position of the observer at the UN is an important apostolic work of yourself.
At the United Nations, there are representations from all over the world, and consequently you also see the interaction between various religious groups. And you can see immediately the difference, the way they think about one specific topic in a different manner, because they all come from different cultural, ethnic, and religious backgrounds. So it has been a very controversial matter there at the United Nations. When the Western countries take the floor in discussing an issue, let's just say the life issue, they have their concerns to address, which will not necessarily coincide with, for example, the Muslim countries, or those who are coming from the Asian countries, which has like from India, with a Hindu background or for a Buddhist background. And it is very interesting to see the clash of ideas in the beginning. And afterwards, we start negotiating, we start discussing about it, then we come across a common position on which we all can agree on. So during the negotiation, we don't get everything that we want, but we can find a common position on which we can agree on finally, and then take the negotiation forward. The reason why I'm saying is that the mutual respect that has to exist at the United Nations is that one should not try to impose one's views on others. And we should have to respect the values and principles that a country is standing for or is built on, its own culture. So we cannot ignore that. So oftentimes I have been insisting at the United Nations, saying that if a country wants to have, for example, abortion legalized in their country, that should be discussed and decided on at that country's level. But they should not pretend that their national legislation can be brought to the United Nations and imposed on the rest of the world. So this way of approach, unfortunately, does happen.
Yes.
So this is the kind of the mechanism that has been slowly evolving at the United States. That has to be brought to the attention of the general public, that the respect for the values and principles that each and every country that stands for, basing on the religious beliefs, it has to be respected, because this is part of the national spirit of a given nation. And you cannot just discard that or ignore it. So this respect, not only at the political level, but every sphere of action of a given nation need to be respected. And if they have a different view, that has to be respected. So when the Holy See speaks about the right of a person to have its own rights, for example, take the issue of a migrant or the refugees in a given country, their fundamental rights need to be respected. Otherwise, how could a human person develop himself or herself in a country that is not his or her own? They have been already uprooted from the, when I speak about this, I have in mind many Iraqi refugees that are forced to emigrate because of the lack of stability or the security in that country. And when they come and end up in a given nation, whether in Europe or in the United States, if you are not given at least that minimum required rights for them, how will ever be able to survive? So these are the kind of issues that we bring up to the attention of the international community, and there we ask for this total respect for the human person and for the people who happen to be in that given nation, so that they can really build a future for themselves.
And the Holy See, and the Pope personally himself, has made very clear about the rights of migrants, and that you cannot just throw them to the wolves.
The United States has been built by the migrants
Yes.
themselves, so it has its past history itself is something that they should not forget, that the contribution made by the migrants themselves in building this nation. So I think maybe this is a time to give back something what they are, and also keep up the same legacy that the nation has. So oftentimes, for example, the other day I've been there for the celebration of the 150th anniversary of the unification of Italy, and the President Napolitano was saying about how the Italian migrants here in the United States,
Yes.
their contribution that have been made to the nation. So each human person has something to offer to the society or the nation where they are living. But you have to give them that minimum required tools that they need so that they can really fulfill their dreams and aspirations wherever they are living, whether it is in the United States or anywhere in the world. So this is what the Holy See is standing for, the fundamental rights of every human being. because of the dignity that he or she has, and that respect has all to be upheld. And the church has been always in the forefront for that. So the migrants, since they are one of the defenseless groups, wherever they are found, the church has been always outspoken in speaking in favor of the rights of the migrants, so that they should not be left as stateless persons, but they should be given that minimum required rights by which they can really survive in the host country where they happen to be.
I'm thinking, Archbishop, my own ancestors came around 1850, 1870. They came desperately poor from Ireland. Half my relatives from Ireland, and the others from Alsace-Lorraine, which had been invaded by the Austria-Hungary and the Prussians on Bismarck. They came to New York, nothing.
Yes.
They got off the boat. Thank God they had a relative or there taking them out to the poor sections of the big city, and that's how they started to move. And all my life in New York, I've enjoyed as being a priest with migrants and people coming from other countries, and see them move up. I watched the Puerto Rican people move up beautifully. Now we see the Dominicans moving up, the Mexicans moving.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I have been saying that also we are talking about the Western countries, but I think this is equally valid also in any other country. And let me take you to the Middle East, for example. The Iraqi refugees who are migrating to the border countries, the nearby countries like Jordan, Syria, or Lebanon. So I've been telling to the bishops there, the Christian migrants who are coming to your country, accept them, welcome them as members of the same family. The reason why I was bringing this to their attention is that we talk about the silent exodus of Christians from the Middle East.
Of the Middle East.
Okay. But I tell them, you see, you have the Christians, the members of our own church, although they belong to a different country, but it is in your territory. If you welcome them as members of the same family, which we call church, they will remain in that country. So they will continue to remain at least in the region. And eventually, they might, once there is security and stability, they will go back to their country. But if you give them that minimum assistance that they need, they will not be tempted to migrate to the Western countries. And we will always have a Christian presence in the Middle East,
yes,
especially in the Holy Land. So if you are going to invest the Christians in Jordan or in Syria or in Lebanon or in Egypt, we can continue to have that presence of the Christians there. But if you treat them as migrants or the second-class citizens, then the first opportunity they will have, they will quit the country or they will quit the region. So there is something that we can work on together so that the refugees themselves that belong to our own family, if we deal with them as members of our own family, they will be there with us, and they will also contribute to the building of the great family that we call the church.
What is obvious, I think, Archbishop, is that people leave their original area where their roots go down 1,000 years and move, say, to the United States, to the big cities. They'll never go back. We have right here in the New York area any number of Palestinian Christians and Muslims, and there's no real returning to the old country.
Well, I call it, as you know, church in the diaspora.
The diaspora, yes.
So this is another thing that I brought to the attention of the bishops in Jordan and in Iraq. Never cut the relation that you have, or the link that you have with your faithful, whether they are in Jordan or in Syria or in the United States or in Europe. Because the church in the diaspora, if you link up properly with them, they could become a support group for the church in the motherland. So we should never forget, and we should never tired of speaking to the church in the diaspora and liaising with them, so that they can, although they are in a different continent, but they will always be together with the church that is suffering church in that particular country, for example, in Jordan or in the Middle East. So, and also you can, they will be the spokesperson for the needs of that suffering church overseas. And there are also several cases where the church in the diaspora has been assisting the mother church. For example, by adoption at a distance, for example, they are supporting many families in their homeland. So this link with the church in the diaspora is very much important, also to preserve their faith or their liturgical traditions or the legacy that church, that particular church, or in this case the Suyurist church, they can continue to promote the values that belongs to that particular church and the tradition they have, although they are living in a different continent or in a different country. So this continued relation with the church in the diaspora is very much important. I think the bishops there in the Middle East or in any other church where they have a big diaspora church, they are taking very much seriously this continuation of the relation with their church in the diaspora, and it has been going on well so far. And this interaction between the two churches is really very enriching for the mother church.
What is a sad example, somewhat funny but sad, that here in the United States, the vast majority of people come in from Europe, different countries in Europe, and they get rid of their language very quickly. Very seldom does the next generation learn the old language, which would be very helpful for them to know,
yes,
to be able to Italian or French or some Spanish. And then they lose the food. Now, you see, think of all the Italian people that used to be able to make marvelous Italian food. Now, the Irish, they loved corned beef and cabbage, you see. There were the Germans, they used to have Wiener Schnitzel. And I remember these when I was a little boy, different. But now everything is, meat and potatoes. It's too bad, but I suppose it's the building of a new country. I pray for our country, Archbishop. You're from another country. And I hope that it is going to get beyond a bland secularism. Secularism is an awful thing. It's a day without sunshine, and it doesn't give anybody to look forward into eternal life. And Archbishop, thank you so very, very much.
Most welcome.
And I'm very grateful to you, the Holy See, and even to the United Nations these many years doing the best they could. Archbishop, could you give us your blessing?
Almighty God, we ask you to bless all of us here present and the EWTN and Father Benedict so that we may continue to dedicate ourselves in our mission in spreading the gospel message. And I ask you to bless all of us in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thanks so much, Archbishop. And I know that you're going to be helping us with keeping things opening. Tell Mother Angelica soon. I'll be seeing her, and we're sending some envelopes down to keep things going. I do hope that you pray for our dear Mother Angelica, who's done so much good for all of us. And I'm hoping to see her soon and give her all, on the part of all of you, the very best wishes. God bless.